Welcome back to the show. Courtney Wallace again checking in. As always, we talking sports, and today we're back on the court. We're talking basketball, and we have the pleasure of speaking with the president of the Jamaica Basketball Association, the JaBA, Mr. Paulton Gordon, a man who's very busy, and he's like, you know what they say in Jamaica, a man is like good goal, him scarce. So when we catch him, we catch him. Paulton, how you doing, bro?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Man, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Just happy, happy and appreciative that you took the time out to talk to us today, on basketball. Let's get straight to it because right now basketball has a buzz, or can I say a new buzz? Because basketball for probably about 25, 30 years has had a buzz in Jamaica, but something new has happened in that you and your team were recently able to pull off FIBA competition, and you're probably still on cloud nine over that one, the success of that one.
Yeah, generally in terms of the execution, in terms of the planning and the pieces that came together to host for the first time FIBA qualifying games, that was kind of landmark situation. So we're happy and pleased that we were able to do that. The feedback from FIBA is they're satisfied, they're happy with what they saw, and we're looking forward to doing a lot more of that.
Yeah, but just give us a quick synopsis of how you were able to pull that off.
Well, in terms of can you expand on that?
I mean, in terms of just preparation, I know that Jamaicans we're not new to hosting top level competition, but when you're hosting some like a world governing bodies event like a FIBA event, I'm sure a lot of logistics planning and a lot of negotiating and all that must have happened for them to be confident enough to say yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's accurate. That's so true. Again, it is the very first time we are getting to the stage in the revamp approach to qualifiers in the region, as it relates to FIBA Americas, where you are expected to host and play home and away games during the different windows. And as you're aware, basketball is not necessarily top of the mind sport in Jamaica as it relates to support, especially from private sector. And because of that, we had some infrastructure challenges. The indoor center is a multi-use facility, so it's not retrofitted for basketball per se. So the first thing that we had to get right is to ensure that you have all the pieces to retrofit it properly for basketball purposes. And that in itself poses a challenge. But with support from certainly the government, from some of the government agencies like the tourism guys, we were able to bring in all the pieces together. Phase one, phase three, media guys did a really, really remarkable job in terms of video boards and all the pieces in terms of infrastructure needs to create that environment and atmosphere to host to the standards that FIBA had indicated.
Right. And speaking of the atmosphere, from what we saw, I mean, you had obviously some marketing would have gone into it too, because again, like you said, basketball not necessarily top of the mind, not one of the probably top five, or maybe if it's top five, it probably would be fifth of mine in Jamaica. But you were able to pull out a crowd, got some celebrity support, Usain Bolt, and just a lot of people who came out and really supported that. So obviously a lot of marketing also went into that.
Right. I think we got it right in terms of the team, that the planning team, the local organizing committee. We got some persons who pretty much knew what they were about, and we were able to pull in different facets and strata of the Jamaican society. A lot of persons who are interested in sports, but would have never seen an execution or the whole planning and the implementation of a basketball game in Jamaica. And some of these people would have gone to NBA games, etc., and seen the environment, the atmosphere. But that we were very pleased in terms of who we were able to bring out, the buzz around the game, and ultimately the execution of the activity. The results weren't what we wanted, but hey, that's how it is.
Yeah, but then a lot of people might not know, Paulton, that when it comes down to sports marketing, you really you have a handle on sports marketing. I happen to know that because we've worked together in the past. So I know that you pretty much, and you visited a lot of international tournaments. You've seen them, so you pretty much know what to replicate and what to produce. But also you also know what, as Jamaicans, what we bring, the kind of flavor we bring to sports. I
Absolutely,
wanna
absolutely.
Yeah, I wanna ask you this though. This would top the list of basketball achievements for Jamaica in a long time. But not too long ago, we had a situation where Jamaica, under a previous president, had done very well at the regional level, at the central basket level. What happened afterwards was that, in my opinion, and you can weigh in on this, a lot of that the buzz that was supposed to have created for Jamaica was swept under the rug, and it just never carried forward. The snowball effect never happened.
Right.
How are you gonna guard against that happening this time around?
Well, I guess it comes down to succession planning and just to ensure that we nurture what we have now, engage the stakeholders who have seen the possibilities and what we can achieve. Certainly the private sector, certainly the government. We're talking to the government about improving infrastructure, and that is a centerpiece of moving the basketball forward. Because we have ideas as it relates to sports tourism and youth development. And if the infrastructure is in place, then there'll be a continuous stream of activities that can expose our youngsters and also get the sort of continue the sort of momentum that we are looking for in basketball. So we know the possibilities are tremendous. We have to ensure that the stakeholders are kept at the table. Um, the cohort of players and the various demographics are energized and they want to play basketball. We want to see a more structured local domestic league, and we want to expose our youngsters to more international competition, our age group teams under 15, under 17, under 19. And most importantly, what is required is that we try and ensure that there's a culture of starting basketball at the primary level, similar to what happens in football, similar to what happens in track and field, where the basic schools and primary schools are growing up on those sports. What we find now, a lot of the basketball players, the domestic basketball players, really begin to play basketball when they hit high school, and that's untenable. You really want them to be learning the skills and honing their craft 4 or 5 years prior to that.
Well, thanks again, Mr. President, for basically segueing into just about every part of the interview. You've touched everything that we're going to touch on, because that's a
No,
part of it that I want to.
I was thinking about sustainability. That's why I had to mention some of this.
And of course, naturally, because sustainability is
Yeah,
actually, if there's no sustainability, then
the product
a
is
lot of
dead.
the work that you'd have put in for this huge tournament and this huge success, that it would basically go to nil.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and,
Absolutely.
and we definitely don't want that. So,
Right.
as in we saw in football, you mentioned 1998, we qualified for the World Cup, surprised the entire world. And
Mhm.
then we saw what we expected was more of a top-down kind of a growth, where you had to show people the possibilities and, kind of dangle the carrot and sweeten it so people can see what can happen before work started on the ground. Now, as you mentioned, the infrastructure in Jamaica, the local what happens locally is just not adequate to sustain high level basketball and to produce high level basketball players. Now, I had
Absolutely.
a chat with one of your coaches a couple of weeks ago, and he was pointing out, like you just mentioned, that most of these players, they get introduced to the game when they get to the high school level. No, that, like you say, it's not only inadequate, it's
It's
just
wrong.
wrong on every level you can think of, because at age 11, 12, in most sports, a lot of these players are already eyeing professional participation.
Yeah, absolutely. And they would have the basic skills would have been honed by then, because these kids are 4, 5, 6, 7. They're touching the ball, learning to pass, learning to dribble, learning to crossover, and learning the fundamentals and the rudiments of the game. And if you have kids who coming into high school 10, 11, 12, and introducing them to the games, and the fact is, sorry, a lot of these kids have the interest, they just don't have the guidance and infrastructure to get them to that point until they enter a school that provides some exposure and have a emphasis on basketball.
Right.
Sorry.
So, but that's big though, because if you think about it, at the high school level, we have basketball being played. But now, if you go to the primary school level and the prep school level, what now is it going to take, and how are you going to tackle that issue in order to get basketball now being played at that age group?
Well, we started a program 3 years ago with the Ministry of National Security, although it was skewed to specific demographic. The Ministry of National Security engaged us to have some basketball programs in inner city areas that were kind of violence prone. And we had 13 schools involved in that program. And the coaches we utilized our JaBA, but Jamaica basketball coaches, to be a part of that program. And the results were great. A lot of those kids transitioned into high schools that had some emphasis on basketball. And we were looking to expand that. That program was sponsored primarily by USAID. And then you know what happened with that program. So the funding was cut. So we were quite disappointed with that. So we have been talking to one of our major partners, Mali Foundation, about grassroots basketball. They had set up a GoFundMe program which focuses on grassroots basketball, and we want to look at pockets of primary schools across the island, introduce them to the game, do some specific training for PE teachers in those schools, so that we start spreading the word and spreading it across Jamaica in terms of getting primary level student athletes involved in basketball. So that's part of the plan. We want to get that going, or to get back on that track very soon.
And you touched it again in terms of now, coaches who can coach at that level. I'm sure there is a plan also in place to ensure that, like, not just PE teachers, but even coaches, bringing, because again, you and I know and understand this, that a lot of people tend to focus on athletes, and it's all about the athlete, the athlete, the athlete. But the athlete does not make the sport.
Yeah,
You need overall people who understand the sport, have an interest in the sport, can help to build the culture. So you need coaches, managers, and just basically a buy-in. Even, for us, we're talking school level, just a buy-in from principals, because now you're basically adding another activity where we know some principals, some schools just don't want to be bothered with that. So, in terms of coaching and at the adult level, getting people involved, do you also have programs in place for training where that is concerned?
And you're so correct, because what you want is the entire ecosystem of basketball to get involved in the honing of the skills. So you have the primary product will be the students, the coaches, the principals, and you find that when the principals are locked in, you get a lot more done. And then just the whole support system around the school. So what we did 3 years ago, we had an international trainer who came down and did an introductory course for persons at the primary level, persons that are coaching but with not a lot of experience. And then a few months after, we selected 25 of those coaches for the new revamped World Association of Basketball Coaches Level 1. So we have 25 persons who were deemed competent. The next step is a lot of these coaches are already in the high school system, coaching at the under 14, under 16, under 19 level. What we are hoping is that some of these coaches who have attained that level, when the program is now structured, they will go back into some of those primary schools and will marry some of those primary schools with their high school program. So that will be acting like a feeder. We're not there as yet. We have some of the coaches who are, as I said, certified and deemed competent. So it's a matter of now some of the financing that will be required to move it to that next level.
Right, and like I did say before, yeah, man, you're on top of your game because I know you have a full handle on sports, on the ecosystems of sports. One of the things though is the infrastructure. Let's go back to circa about 1992-95. Basketball was said to be the fastest growing sport in Jamaica, and the reason for that was CVM TV had begun to bring the NBA, so people would rush home every night to go watch NBA. Of course, it was the golden era of the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordans, the Scottie Pippens, and all of them. And the NBA themselves had stepped up their marketing. Jamaica had caught on. The fire was in Jamaica. Back in them days, you remember Paulton, every light post had a bicycle rim and a piece of ply for a backboard on it. Would you agree that we lost that momentum somewhere along the way?
I would say, yeah, we lost that momentum. I was heavily involved in community basketball just after that era, between 99 to 2002, 2003. I was doing some work with the Social Development Commission, and to capitalize on that momentum from the visuals, from the broadcast of international basketball, where a lot of the youngsters, as you rightly said, were shooting hoops on their light posts in their communities. We created at that point in time a community league, and I must say thanks to Texaco, who sponsored that league over a 3-year period. We were able to have a community league which was unmatched in terms of energy support. We had 70 community teams between Kingston, St. Andrew, and St. Catherine who was actually participating in that league. And some of the guys reminded me recently and that was my introduction to administration and governance of basketball. Some of the guys remind me recently that there are still a number of referees and table officials and coaches who came out of that as community engagement, because one of the conditions for participation was that you, apart from the persons who wanted to play, you had to nominate from your community persons who were interested in table officials, table officiating, persons who were interested in coaching, and persons who were interested in referee. So we had parallel training leading up to those community leagues, which kind of spawned a number of persons to expand the ecosystem of referees, coaches, table officials. And there are some of them who are now attached to some of the clubs who reminded me of that initiative and how well it went. So that momentum continued until about 2002, 2003. And then I had left after about 2004. But there was SDF had provided a little bit of funding for that, some funding for that, along with Texaco. And then there was a shift in terms of where the resources went, and that pretty much cartesized that movement and stopped that momentum at a particular time.
Yeah, and let me remind the people, let me remind those who know and for those who don't know, that was the era when Mr. Gordon was also heavily involved. He kickstart 2020 cricket. Big time. I know it because I was involved in it. Boxing. A lot of you see boxing and what you saw over 10, 15 years ago, you would know the history where that is concerned. But we're going to leave that for another time, Paulton. There was the community events you did for track and field. And I remember the era quite well because also I think it was the SDF that then went ahead and they made the outdoor courts.
Yeah.
And of course, one of the best courts ever made was the court at Buckfield in Ocho Rios. That one stood the test of time. And if I'm not mistaken, it is still standing.
It is still standing. It was refurbished to some extent by Sandals Foundation a few years ago, and I think it's been managed by the municipality in St. Anne. But that's an ideal space that we have on our radar if we're talking about getting getting proper infrastructure in that space. Ideally, I'd want that to be a covered court that we can have multiple other activities related to basketball, youth tournaments, etc. So, from an infrastructure standpoint, that's a key space for us.
Yeah. And again, you touch, I mean, the way we think alike. Well, we used to work together, so because that was also one of the space when I was vice president and president when basketball was really hot in that section of the island where we tried to we got the lights in. If you remember the JPS Night League and some stuff that we did there. But where I want to get to now is, outdoor courts is fine, playing on asphalt and all of that. But to prepare our basketball players for international competition, because ultimately that is a goal. Even if they were to matriculate and say get scholarships and go overseas, now they're playing in indoor gyms, right? They're playing on a whole different surface. Do you think that anytime in the near future we could have more indoor spaces across the island where we can actually teach and play basketball and create the atmosphere?
A loaded question. That's a
tough one, I know. That's what I asked you.
That's ideally where we want to get. That's ideally where we want to get, because as you rightly say, you want to hone the skills in the environment where they'll be playing against their peers and playing international competition. I'm to some extent we'll need some outdoor courts because of the new version of, well, it's not new anymore, of basketball. It's trick street basketball, which is literally an outdoor activity, and it's now an Olympic sport. And we're trying to make our mark in that space. But for traditional basketball, full court, if I can get 4 mini enclosed spaces, one in Kingston, one in Manchester, one in Ocho, one in Montego Bay, for now, it would make a world of a difference in terms of how we prepare our youngsters and the possibilities for youth tournaments, for scholarships, for training, for just the whole growth of basketball at all levels. And speaking to the authorities, that's where we want to go. The improvement in infrastructure, which is the equipment and indoor courts. At this point in time, I think UE has a small gym, and they have just changed their surface, and I'm hearing it's very good, and it's FIBA approved. The University of Technology, they have an enclosed space, but not the proper flooring. So if there are existing facilities there that if you get the other things in place, then it can be used as a center. GC Foster probably has one of the best surfaces. I'm hoping that, and we have had preliminary discussions with the persons who are taking over the facilities in Montego Bay. I'm trying to remember the name of the sports facilities on that side, where the football field is, the track was, the complex in Montego Bay.
Yeah.
And I said to them in an informal discussion, I said, you need to make space for basketball, because, and I said this to say, I've quite a few situations where NBA players have come to Jamaica for vacation and are unable to have active rest by just shooting around because there's no facility. They're not going outside. There was one case where one of the agents wanted us to retrofit the convention center. It couldn't be done in time because the player was only here for 4 or 5 days. The court was stored at the convention center. The proper hoops were there, but it locked up. But the player was already here and couldn't get the space prepared for them. But if there is a space that is already there, 360, and without having to do anything, anywhere along that north coast, I can guarantee you that we'll get more presence from NBA players, international players who will vacation longer in Jamaica and bring their entourage to shoot around. And the spin-off can be huge. So
And
outside of even thinking about tournaments, just the mere presence of these celebrities
and
is would create a different level
uh,
of interest and
and
visibility.
you said you mentioned Kingston, Manchester, Otrius, Montego Bay. Now, if
Right.
Miss Lorna Lawson, when she watches this, she's gonna call you and ask you what happened to Outer East, but that's for another time.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
Paulton, it's
What's
one of
that?
the
I was
interesting
thinking
things
about a
about
starting point.
yeah, it's one of the
Mhm.
interesting things about Jamaica, though, and sports, because we've been talking sports tourism now forever. We've had the conversation with football. Yeah, we still
Mhm.
have not got our facilities for football up because football has also mooted the same point of having regional centers that are top class centers where
Mhm.
you have a situation now where players play within their communities, within the schools, wherever, and the objective is to get to stadium because you remember the days when stadium was the carpet. Everybody wants to get to stadium.
Mhm.
And the thing was that why not get facilities across the island where they can play towards this regional place, making a final, a semi-final, whatever in that is a big thing. But again, you mentioned, and for those of us who have worked in the tourism space, we know that tons of international sports stars vacation in Jamaica.
Mhm.
And especially, they're on vacation, but they want a place to work out. But we have
Absolutely.
no secure space and we have no facility that's up to par. But it's taking so long. I mean, like, you're now in that position now where you're directly involved and you really want to see this happening now. Do you actually see this happening anytime soon?
Well, I've been talking to everybody. I've been talking to everybody. I've been talking to government. I've been talking to private sector. I even sent a note to Bruce Bicknell at Tankwell. And send a snapshot of what I'd probably want as a starting point, something that's covered. I've been talking to persons who have come for camps. I've spoken to people like the Thompson twins dads. I've talked to AJ the Bouncer's dad. I spoke with Devin Vasso was here last summer with an entourage about 40 persons, family and friends. He rented the entire place. He couldn't work out. He just relaxed for the 5 or 6 days. Um, um, Murray was here last year. Um, Also, trying to remember his name. He's at LA Lakers now. He plays for Bahamas. His mom is Jamaican. DeAndre, DeAndre Ayton. He was
Mm-hmm.
here. He gave back some stuff to his mom's community in St. Elizabeth. But he was here for a few days. And then he got signed while he was here to LA Lakers. He had to rush back to work out. If we had a facility, he would probably stay here and work out a few days and then transition and head out. But there are a number, as you rightly said, of celebrities who have come and would opt to stay much longer if we had the sort of facilities that could accommodate them.
But
But
also up to stay. But then they would also the word would get around, and for those who haven't been and would have heard of Jamaica, because again, right now Jamaica is a buzz,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it
yeah. And
seems like
just
it's more of a hype than anything else because we're lacking so much substance.
yeah, and as you rightly say again, is these guys come and post two pictures and then it's like an avalanche
Right,
that afterwards. And as the brand is so strong, and if you have that layer on involved, then it would be an explosion. It
right.
would be an explosion of interest.
And then again, without these proper facilities now, you are now, as a head of JaBA, are now gonna be always having to search out the NBA, search out the college system, search out Europe to find players who have a link to Jamaica to get those players to come back and play. Just like, we've seen a lot of that in football. That's actually one of the ways that the football program was kickstarted from
Mhm.
94 for the 98 campaign, and that continues, which there's nothing wrong with that. But you also want to see some of your homegrown
Mhm.
players being
Yeah.
able to play at that highest level so you can bring them back. You know what I mean?
And that's what you want. Right now, we have quite a few players who actually get moves moves from Jamaica. And that transition is normal. They move from Jamaica because of scholarship opportunities, get into D1, D2, junior colleges, own their skills. Some might transition to the NBA, some might go play in Europe. And we invite our current Jamaica national team. We have at least 5 or 6 persons who took that route, and that's fine. And we consider those homegrown players because they would have gone to high school here. But you want the domestic system to be strong. You want the domestic league to be strong. You want our youth program to be strong, so we can churn out more of these people, and also have a nice mix or balance, because there's no doubt about it. The opportunities in North America are greater. The infrastructure is greater. The whole pathway is clearer. And so although the raw talent level might be similar, the opportunities and the possibility are so much greater in North America that the players turn up in better condition, greater skill set, and more aware in terms of basketball.
Right.
So we'll continue to have that, I think, that mix, but you want to create a solid foundation in the Jamaican context.
Right. Matter of fact, I don't think you know this. You might or might not know, but there's a player. I think his last name is Grant, who actually grew up in Jamaica, then left. I think probably after about a year or two of high school. Never played basketball. Never knew anything about basketball basically while he was in Jamaica. When he went to high school in the US, somebody looked at him and said, you could be a good ball player. And he said, okay, let's try it. Well, he went on to win 2 championship rings with NCU, North Carolina.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, he came back twice. This was about 2012-13. He came back with a group and actually did a clinic. We did a clinic in Ochoria. So there are also those guys out there who are willing to help. But like you said, once the ecosystem and the culture becomes strong and the culture continues to be strong, then you'll pull them out of the woodwork.
Absolutely.
Because one thing we know about Jamaicans, once they go overseas and they find success, they always want to give back to the country. But we have to be prepared to receive what they're willing to give back. But let's move now to the adult league, the NBL. Had that some time ago. I remember again back in the 90s, it was strong. I mean, Ocherias had 2 teams. There was a team coming out from the east. Montego Bay was strong. I think there was a team in Westmoreland. Manchester had Team R. And then that also kind of fell away. But I noticed now 2 things in one, that you've engaged Chris Williams. We know his work with football, but engaged him to I don't know if I want to revitalize, but to kickstart the commercial leg of basketball. Give us a little insight as to the thinking where that is concerned.
Well, one of the things that when I became president, one of the first things I told my board and some of the stakeholders is that JaBA, Jamaica Basketball, has its hands full. We are supposed to be focusing primarily on our national teams, age group teams, women and men. And that will be about probably 6 teams, 15, 17 senior teams. That should be our focus. Our focus should be strengthening also the referee body, and the coaching, the slate of coaches that we have. And also have development clinics like the Star Search Camp, etc. That if we are doing that right, our hands will be basically full. I said to them that I'd want to pawn off the if we pawn off the leagues. And I said to them, look, it's not as if we are reinventing the wheel. The English Premier League is not run by the English FA. It is run by a select body with ownership by the clubs.
Absolutely.
And that's where I want to go. We have 10 clubs now who are part of the NBL. And if we create a structure where they're owners of the league and are bringing the pieces, all JaBA has to do is help with the governance and the management to some extent, and the regulations. But in terms of the operationalizing of that and the function and the functionality of it, that shouldn't be our primary responsibility. So that's where we're looking. I'm hoping that within the next 2 years we'll have a semi professional league. That's why I brought in Chris. So this year what we are doing, we have two arms of 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 the league which will be functional, and there has to be some integration. The competitions committee, which is led by Denzel Wilkes and his group, and we have asked about 3 members of the or 3 or 4 members from the clubs to be a part of that planning committee. And some of our about 2 members of JaBA's system and board. So there are about a 6 or 7 man team that is the competitions committee to look at the structure, to look at the rollout, to look at what. And then the commercial side, which we have asked Chris to anchor, and he has brought in Tanner Perkins, who was at Sportsmax, to be a part of that. And they will look at the commercialization of the league and making this intellectual property a standout one for partners, for stakeholders. We ultimately aim to attract talent from the region. We already have some interest from some of the smaller leagues in the States who might be interested in sending players down. Not sure about this year, but we want to create that foundation, create that structure where it can transition into probably a semi-professional league by next year or the latest 2028.
Well, that sounds like you're well underway because next year is just really just around the corner when you speak of sports planning. So it sounds like you have quite a few of your ducks already in a row.
Yeah, basically, and this year is it will be used more like a pilot to see where the glitches are, where the strengths are, and to see what and how the buy-in that we get from the teams.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to have a meeting with the teams next week to outline all of that so that they have a full appreciation of where we want to go.
But speaking of the teams, though, do you believe that you have a cohort of managers, people at the managerial level, who would grasp and understand this concept? Because I ask the question because, and you know, we've been through it where you try to get these things to the teams, and it's foreign to a lot of them. It's above a lot of people's heads, so people are gun shy or they're just outright resistant. What is the plan now to ensure that there's the communication and there's a smoothing over of that so that you don't have that issue?
The thing is that the teams are at varying levels of organization and structure. You have some that are really run properly, like a club or a team, and are actually looking at the big picture. And we have a few of them who are a little bit too ad hoc for my liking, and we'll need help. We need help in terms of structure and organization. And that's what we hope with our partners. What we're hoping to do is bring in some expertise to guide some of them in terms of what is required to really run a team. And in some cases, what we might need to do is layer on persons with the capacity to help with it, to embed them in some of these teams to help with the whole planning. So it's not as if they are standing alone, but we have like anchors who will support the growth and development from a governance standpoint, from an administrative standpoint, to strengthen these teams.
Right.
It has to be that way if we're going to make it a semi-professional league. But like in everything else, if you look at the English Premier League, you have strong teams, strong administration, strong dollars, and those who are on the verge of relegation who are not so strong. So we don't expect everybody to be at the same level, but you want to have some minimum standards.
By the way, speaking of EPL, which team is your team in the EPL?
The leader.
Oh man, no, stop now. Stop. Don't play with me now. Not on this Saturday. You could have played with me last week Saturday, but not this Saturday.
I said the leader.
And I'm gonna make a guess, You see the fact that you won't call a name?
But I said the leader. Everybody who follows football know the leader. That's not in dispute.
You're not talking about the Netflix team now, are you?
I'm talking about the leader. Look who is at the top of the table, and you have it right.
Well, I saw two results today. One was what, 2-1, one was 1-0. All right.
Yeah, just check the
But
results.
eh?
Just check the result. Just check the table.
Yeah, man. I'll get back to you at the end of the season. Get back to you
You'll
at the
have
end
no
of
doubt. You'll have no doubt.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
before we go now, Paulton, as we wrap up, here's one issue that has always, for me personally, has been a vexed issue where basketball is concerned. Basketball tends to be urban heavy, and for obvious reasons. A lot of Jamaica's basketball is played in Kingston for obvious reasons. When I was there, one of the issues that I ran into running a league and running a conference, a rural conference, is that when you think of a team in, say, Brownstown having to play a game in Ocherius or vice versa, the traveling, the time is much different from a team out in Harborview who needs to travel to the stadium courts, or even who needs to travel to Tivoli or to Waterhouse to play a game. So the cost involved is very different. It's a whole different world, a different kind of beast. And when we tried to speak to JaBA back then about, to bridge that gap and to help out where that it was concerned, it was lost on a lot of people. They just couldn't wrap their minds around it. Now, for your administration and for you personally, when you think of developing the game, especially at that semi-pro level, how do you factor in getting basketball up and running, being strong in the urban areas and also in the rural areas at the same time?
Well, I must say first and foremost, globally, basketball is considered an urban sport. It is considered an urban sport, and
Problems.
it plays out pretty much the same in Jamaica. And the other version of it is even more so. The 3x3 version is even more so because that's played in major cities, plays in malls, played, and there's a big buzz about around 3x3 basketball in Europe, really in the center cities. So so that being said, we all know that talent comes from everywhere. And it comes down to the sponsorship and revenue generation and support. In some instances, the only way to alleviate that issue, and I'll step back a little bit, because even our NBL, we have two of the teams that typically has to travel a lot, the Montego Bay team and the Manchester team. And they have to travel a lot because of the inadequacy of infrastructure and in some of those spaces. So most of their games are actually played in Kingston. And the cost to the league is usually borne by the league, not the teams, right? And it's a heavy burden. Last year, for example, Notford Express was able to sponsor the Montego Bay team, which made it a lot easier. But there are still incremental costs. And the teams have to find some of that. They have to ensure they feed the players twice to come to Kingston. They have to make sure they have enough snacks for them to get back. So there are still attendant costs. That will be there. So I understand the thing, because a lot of people don't understand how in rural Jamaica, the transportation network is totally different. Because in the urban space, you take a taxi, $100 taxi, and you're around the corner. As you rightly say, coming from up in the hills of St. Ann into Ocherios is like a huge travel challenge.
Could be easily $500 or more.
Right.
Per
And so
person.
the cost and the time and just the whole logistics around that is a
Plus
challenge.
distance.
Plus the distance. So to alleviate that, when the league, when the feeder leagues are improving, it has to be properly resourced to take care of that. And also the structure have to be it had to be set up in a way that you want to minimize travel for the localized activity until you get to, say, a national level. So there are some things that we're toying around with, but we're not there as yet. But it comes down to the revenue and resources that are required to drive some of these things.
And and here's the good thing about this strat is that you understand those challenges For too long it seems as if for some people it was just lost on them. And again, like you said, if you're going to create an ecosystem that is inclusive and it's going to be pulling talent from everywhere and anywhere, then it has to be a holistic approach.
Definitely.
Now, we're going to close pretty much where we started, at the top level, at the FIBA level. The results from February weren't what you expected, not what we'd have wanted. However, I do believe that the team did put in a good shift. I mean, basketball is kind of a different game, where if you think of a Bahamas, a lot of people, you say Bahamas and international competition, now you're thinking football. Yeah, the Reggae Boys can run over Bahamas in football. When you touch basketball, now it's a whole different level, because what the Bahamas have in terms of basketball, Jamaica would love to get a fraction of that. Because those countries are basketball heavy and they produce a lot of good players and teams.
That's their primary thing.
Yeah, and like now with the summer coming up, they have tons of leagues sponsored by the Adidases. I mean, travel ball and all of that happens in basketball. It's from the United States to the Bahamas is almost like traveling from one state to the other.
Right.
Pretty much. But now, we're looking forward. July is just around the corner, Paulton. Talk to us now about heading out to Canada, playing Puerto Rico and Canada in July. Talk to us about prep for that, lessons learned from February in terms of facing the teams, and just preview that for us.
All right, correction, no. It'll be Bahamas and then Canada.
Bahamas, okay.
So it's Bahamas July 3rd and then Canada July 6th.
Right.
So that's what we are prepping for. I know the coach. We have had weekly meetings with the coach to see where they are. The coach is finalizing his roster, and he's in touch with all of the players who are currently in Europe, and then the NBA players who are in North America. So he's from a technical side, he's working on that. We've been having discussions again with our primary partner, Mali Foundation, about how can we ensure that all the pieces from a financial standpoint is in place. So we're talking to them, or we have a group in Florida who helps us with the operations for the senior team. People like Dominique, who's the team manager, people like Mr. Siaga's daughter. She's quite helpful with as it relates.
Let's tie that down to a junior moment.
Annabella
Siaga, yep.
I don't know why it slipped me. She's been very active in terms of helping the operational side of the team. And even when we had our training camp last year in Florida, they were very instrumental in ensuring that we had the space in Boca, we had everything in place, and the guys were very, very comfortable. So that arm has been very, very, very important to where we are at in terms of support. So we are in the planning mode, and we are putting things in place to ensure that we put our best foot forward for that window, because we understand what is at stake. Clearing this hurdle and getting to the final phase, where we potentially meet Argentina, Uruguay, and Panama for a place in 2027 World Cup, would be huge. The spotlight on Jamaica basketball, the interest from the diaspora overseas. FIBA themselves are excited because of the buzz Jamaica basketball is getting, and we just wanted them to give us a little bit more leeway in terms of some of the things that we're asking for. Some of the players who have asked them. I don't know if you know the rule, Courtney, that you need to get your Jamaican passport before the age of 18. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Wow.
It's not like football where it's open.
Right.
If it was like football, it was open, we'd have 10 NBA players playing for Jamaica.
Wow.
But it was 16 years, and they raised it in December to 18. So if you have your passport before 18, you're considered to be open and eligible.
Right.
Right now we're using Norman Powell as the one player who gets his passport after 18. For each roster, you can only use one player who has gotten the passport beyond that.
Wow.
But there are opportunities to appeal based on their ties to Jamaica. So someone like Devin Vassell, who comes to Jamaica from San Antonio Spurs, comes to Jamaica and he does his camp and he comes every year. Looking at real estate in Jamaica. He's fully tied because what FIBA is trying to avoid is the mercenary shift. As some persons indicated, that was the situation in track and field recently.
The
So
Turks.
FIBA is trying to control that unabated shift from country to country just by getting a passport without any major ties. So we have been trying to appeal eligibility because we have tons of Jamaicans who are doing very well, who wants to play for Jamaica. As I said, the Thompson twins, they come to Jamaica, we host them. Devin Vassell, Isaiah Stewart. There are a number of them who are he plays for Toronto Raptors, Scotty Barnes. So there are a number of these people who are Jamaican, true and true, who are ready to represent us. But we have to go through the process with FIBA, appeal their situation one by one, because they would have gotten their Jamaican passport after the age of 18. And in some instances, FIBA might say, okay, that's fine, we'll approve them. In other instances, they might say, no, they don't have enough ties.
Right.
So that's where we are.
So you basically I beg some big lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you saw your face, if you can see your face on camera, but once you touched on that, I saw your face light up a way where, I mean, I can see that you're seeing a vision is clear that, and as you rightfully said it, if we can get players of this caliber, then we definitely can create a buzz. But you know,
yeah, man,
when you mentioned
we break into the top 10. We break into the top 10 easily. We'd break into the top 10 easily.
Easily, right. And when you mention playing like the likes of Argentina and then teams are making it, then yeah, that would be huge. I just hope though, from an administration standpoint, that you know you guys take this time to prepare for when these successes come, how you deal with them. Because again, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We've seen what has happened with football, where they've dropped so many balls and missed so many penalties. I mean, right now we're reeling as a country with not making the senior men's World Cup, despite doing well at the age group level, despite the women doing so well, but the marquee is actually the men. So, you know, it would be great for basketball if the senior men can go ahead and pave that way so that everything else will open up. Because again, let's not forget the Wagonist effect. Yeah. You know, if once we have success at that international level, the snowball effect is that now you'll have more commercial people jumping on board, and people will see the possibilities, and hopefully some of the frustrations from cricket and football will fall into the lap of basketball, and then we can see a whole new era where we can take down some of the hoops off of the light pole and put them on some proper facilities so that we can have some good basketball being played. Absolutely. On the island. Well, Mr. President, I want to thank you for your time as always. Congratulations on a job well done so far. As you know, I'm pretty much familiar with some of the history of basketball at the administrative level, and for you to have overcome some of the challenges and to take it to where it is now, and to see your eyes light up when you speak of the future, then it just it says that a lot is happening, and we're really happy for that, because like I always tell people, that it's not so much about us, it's about the future, it's about the kids coming up.
Absolutely.
It's mining all the talent that's there and being able to put them out there. Of course, over the years we've had a number of players who have gone on to tertiary education in the United States, and that, like you said, have played in the States, in Europe. And a lot of people don't know that the NBA is not the only professional league out there. Even in the States, there's a lot more basketball being played, and people can actually make money from doing it. So, yeah, man, I want to thank you, for talking to us. And as always, we wish you all the best. And, we're rooting for you.
Yeah, man,
long time brethren.
Yeah. The more exposure we can get and more visibility we can get, the more we can pull in more stakeholders to make this really, really huge. So I
Indeed.
appreciate the spotlight being shone on basketball.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. All right, brethren.
All
Go ahead and enjoy the rest of your day. And like I said,
right.
man, we'll stay in touch.
All right. Thank you,
All right.
man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Talk some more. All
All
right.
right.
Good night.